Who's talking?
Hey everybody, how's it going? If you guys can hear us, go ahead and drop a quick note in the comment section. Make sure we're live and in person. Loretta, how's it going? Hi Jim. Hey Brian, how's it going?
It's going great. Good afternoon. Welcome to Saturday.
Yeah,
Beautiful
it is a
Saturday.
beautiful Saturday up here in the PNW. That's for sure. Oh, you have a nice day over there too, Loretta. Hey Guillaume.
It looks like people can see and hear us, so that's good news.
Always good news. Yeah.
People are still trickling in here, but we can go over kind of quick housekeeping notes before we dive in. A lot of you guys have probably already used Run the World, but obviously there's a couple different cool features. You got the comment section. So on the top right, you'll be able to hop over to comments, and as the presentation is going on, you can ask questions, kind of communicate with Brian, and you also see some of the emojis down there that you can kind of interact in that way. It's a lot of fun to kind of go through that.
Also, after the session, it'll be all recorded and you'll have access to it indefinitely. So make sure you take advantage of that. There's going to be a lot of in-depth information, so you'll want to be able to reference it later. That'll just be in that same web page that you clicked join this session or preview or whatever it said, depending on when you jumped in. It'll say watch recording. You probably have done that if you've used Run the World in the past, but yeah, just so you can access the recordings through there. Great. Cool. And then, yeah, I think that's the main. If you ever lose audio or the screen pauses for you, go ahead and hit the refresh button on your browser and make sure you refresh the page. Sometimes it even takes a couple of times, like 2 or 3 times, especially if when we start sharing videos, for some reason, it just needs a little bit of refreshing, but then it generally works. So yeah, just a couple of housekeeping notes there. Cool.
Yeah, I think that's the most part. Kind of take care of that. Exciting part of this giveaway is this workshop is a giveaway. At the very end, we'll be announcing the winner to a FLIR thermal imaging camera that attaches right to your smartphone. It's a really cool setup, really intuitive, easy to use, and we'll show you a bunch of data when it comes to just the thermal energy side of building, and kind of just it's fun. And we've used them in our house, and you can literally go around, kind of like just viewing the different wall spaces and windows, and you can see where the weak points are in your thermal envelope. So it's a lot of fun, and that's going to be we're going to announce that at the very end of this workshop. So stay tuned for that.
Yep, for sure, definitely. We're really excited for that. But in the meantime, we're really excited to have this workshop. It's a deep dive on radiant floor heating systems and a little bit of our past history when we were building tiny homes with the company that we started about 7 years ago. We had tried quite a few different radiant floor heat mats and systems that go underneath the flooring. And there always seemed to be some sort of issue with the manufacturer side of it. Based around the flooring, the heating mats were specifically built for a fixed situation, so a house on a foundation, and it was not made to be mobile. So we always ran into some sort of situation or problem with the specific heat mats. We'd get the flooring down, we'd get it all set up, and we get to the very final stages and get the thermostat hooked up, and next thing we knew, it wouldn't work, and it was so frustrating. And we just couldn't figure out a way to make it happen. So we ended up actually telling our clients that we couldn't do it. And now fast forward a couple of years, we came into touch with Gold Heat, and we're super excited about this specific product because they're intentionally manufactured for life on the road. They're manufactured for mobile solutions, and specifically, they've been going inside of really, really high-end motor coaches, the really nice RVs that you see flying down the road. That's the main use case that they've basically built these mats for. And only just recently, they've been branching into, realizing that their mat solution works in many, many situations. I guess they've always known that, but they're now presenting it, and people are it's catching on, and they're winning different prizes at different trade shows and all that. But I don't want to steal the thunder. So in the meantime, we have Brian Bishop here, who's the CEO of Gold Heat, and we'll give it up to him, and we can let him take it away from here.
Well, awesome. Thank you. Well, look, everybody, hey, really appreciate you taking time out of your Saturday, your busy weekend, a really nice weekend in the Pacific Northwest, like the 3 we get in a year, right? So that you can come learn about radiant floor heat. It's and before we get too deep in this, hey, Zach, Jason, thank you so much for giving us this virtual forum so we can have this conversation, which actually gives us better reach in 2021 than we would have thought possible in 2019, right? So one of the benefits of COVID is we've learned how to do all these virtual forums.
Exactly.
So it's been fantastic. And these guys have been super helpful in this tiny house journey that we've embarked on, because it's just a way to get everyone together and say, hey, how are we going to make this work? What do we need to do to be successful? So give a hand to Jason and Zach and virtual copying and those in the comments. And the other thing in comments is we've got our engineering team here today. So if you have any questions in chat, just slam it in there. We got a team in the back room, and they will answer the questions. And if it's something really, really super interesting, then they'll open the door and say, hey, Brian, we got this really cool question that I want to pause and talk about. So this is a workshop. It's not a lecture. And we'll be demonstrating things. And if we want to pause and talk about something because you thought of something really cool, then we're going to spend time doing that. We've got the time. We have the time today to make that happen. So the most important learning is the one that you actually learn. And if we can spend time asking a question, filling in a blank, we're going to do that for you. So let's talk about what we're going to go over today. We really have 5 sections. One of them is, who are we? We got our intros, introductions. They gave us, they talked us up really good. Thank you. I really appreciate that. We're talking a little about who we are at Gold Heat. Now we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about the science of heating in an RV and how it's very similar, if not identical, to a tiny house. This was a natural growth for us. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about the different kinds of radiant heat. After that, we'll talk about what you should consider when selecting a radiant heating product, and then we'll have a demonstration of our 2 products on how you design and install those products in your tiny house project. So, Gold Heat, who are we? Who are we? Gold Heat is a custom designer or manufacturer of electric radiant floor heat mats. That's what we do. We're located just outside of Portland, Oregon, in a town called Hillsboro, for those of you that know the Northwest. And everything we do, design, manufacturing, support, everything is out of our Oregon office. We're Oregon, USA based. We've been making these mats for the RV and luxury motor coach business for almost 20 years. Company started in 2002, first ship product in 2003. We've recently expanded, like the guy said, into tiny homes. We've been doing a lot of residential on and off over the years, home remodelers, floor installation professionals, all sorts of folks that want radiant floor heat because we know how to make it work. Now, what's awesome about tiny house is how similar it is to RV. Now, you would buy a tiny house for one reason, then an RV for another. Underlying all that, it's the same kind of thing. RVs move, tiny house on wheels certainly move. RV insulation is very similar to tiny house insulation. Tiny houses can follow RV standards. We comply with all those. And as tiny homes get more regulatory support, we'll be able to support that just as well. One of the things, fun fact, an RV technician once told us that an RV is like building a home that is in a continuous 5.2 Richter scale earthquake. When your RV or tiny house is going down the road, that's a 5.2 earthquake. And we've been doing this for almost 20 years. Since 2002, 2003, we've got this wired. So how did we get here? Well, back in 2002, there was a big need in the RV industry for a faster way to install a more reliable radiant floor heat product. Enter Ken Millard. He was brought in to take care of the RV manufacturing business, and he is the president, founder, inventor. He made Gold Heat happen. And the key of this is that it's a one-step installation process. You don't have to wait for multiple layers of thin set to cure. And why this is important is that in the RV business, those coaches push down the assembly line every 2.5 hours. And if your floor is not done, you're impeding progress. And they were not going to put up with that. Just like building a house, RV manufacturing, time is money. So it was a big, big deal. And the other thing is that this had to be a reliable product. It had to work straight out of the box. And we've had 18 years to perfect installing and working straight out of the box. And they're already set up. The electrician's work is very simple. The electrician has to hook up 2 wires, 3 wires to a thermostat. They have to, it's ready to go. That's all I have to say is it's ready to go. And if in case something goes wrong, if some random assembly step puts a nail through the wire, we can diagnose and repair that mat, which sets us apart from everybody else. And if anybody needs help, any of our customers need help, they can call our Oregon-based, knowledgeable, really skilled engineering team that can help them through any wrinkle. So it is Oregon-based. So East Coast people, please let us get into the office before you give us a rainbow. We will get back to you. Our mission is not just to have happy customers, although that is part of it. We want to create partners so that when you need the service, it's there. When you have a question, we have an answer. So quick audience poll, quick question. Has anyone out there bought, so 2-part question. Has anyone out there bought Radiant Floor Heat online? And what was your experience? Let's just pause a couple seconds and see what we get. Anybody stepping up to type? No questions yet? No? Okay, I see something flipping by.
Notable question.
Couldn't find a viable option. Well, you've got one now. So if you are buying mats online, and you can buy them online, they're typically not customized to your floor plan. One of the things that we hear from people is typically the cold lead is way, way, way too long. This cold lead is the lead from the mat back to the thermostat or junction box. And there are other wiring challenges. With a Gold Heat mat and our support team, you don't have to worry about that. Who are you going to call if you run into trouble with an online provider? That is a fair question to ask. When you work with anybody, I don't care if it's radiant heat or wood, right? Floor material. You need someone who will analyze and understand your project. You need someone that helps get the order right so that you get the right product for your situation. Make sure that the mat is properly sized and has enough power. We're going to talk about power budgets. We're going to talk about what it takes to run a radiant heat mat in various climates. It's live assistance that we can give you to help with any of your questions, design and installation and troubleshooting, and diagnostics if required. We can make all of that happen for you. And we're not just a company that lives by ourselves. We're a member of a lot of industry associations because it takes an industry to make any product happen. A tiny house, you have how many tradespeople in your tiny house? Is a zillion, right? So we are members, have been for years, of RVIA, Recreational Vehicle Industry Association. We're a member of the Recreational Vehicle Women's Alliance. And right now we are a supporter of something called Grab to Fab, where they took a 2007 trailer and these ladies are completely remodeling this product to put in our black gold radiant film product. We'll talk about that. We are also a member of the Tiny Home Industry Association, commonly referred to as THEA. And THEA, if you aren't a member, please become a member of THEA. if you ask the question, who can I turn to for reliable information about my tiny house or the tiny house movement, Thea is the right place to start. It's a nonprofit organization that advocates state, municipal, and at the federal level for regulatory changes and support for us to be able to put tiny houses where we want to put tiny houses. They develop industry standards for building, construction, placement, you name it, all things tiny homes, they're involved. So for a low price of $25, you can be plugged in to an organization that can really, really help you. So who else on here is a member of Thea? Well, he is. Who else? Type in the chat, please. I can see chats scrolling away. What do we got?
Somebody who's on the executive board.
Someone on the executive board of Thea. Well, there you have it. Zach, good. It's fantastic. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about Thea. It just makes such a huge difference. Helping to create the standards is a big deal because that's how we get the regulatory support to really be successful. Because otherwise, a building inspector can shut us down. No one wants that. $25 a year Thea membership. So, where are we? $25? Yes. Finding hard? Yes. Anyways, please. We talked about how Thea provides a wealth of information, has one-stop shopping for a lot of material, personal access to a lot of professional organization that can even give you links to contacts to talk to other people about why they would want how you can be helped by someone else who's already walked the path that you're walking. So that's why we joined a professional organization that can help, that can really help you out. Please just move on. Okay, so we say Thea. It is THIA, the Tiny Home Industry Association. And look them up at tinyhomeindustry.org. Now, Gold Heat, this is Thea is one of the places we're a member of. Another one is the HBA of Portland, Home Builders Association. We're also members at the national level. We're also members of the National Kitchen and Bath Association, where a lot of radiant heat gets installed and used when people really like that luxury comfort. So, enough about us. Let's talk about the science of radiant floor heat. We have a couple of videos that we're going to show and talk through. The first one is we are radiant video. So we're talking, this is how radiant heat versus standard heat works in an RV. When you have air blowing around, that air is hot and it goes straight to the top of the RV. So you can see it's hot at the top and not so warm underneath. When it's radiant heat, it starts from the floor because it's radiant floor heat and goes up through the whole space. It starts with your feet. I don't know about you, but I can't wear short socks. I get cold ankles. When I'm on a radiant floor like I am right now in our workshop, my ankles are nice and warm and comfortable because the floor is heating me up directly. If I can see the floor, then the radiant heat can see me. That's how it works. So now we'll look at a tiny house. Very, very similar. We have hot air, and that hot air rises to the top. And then if it's radiant floor heat, it starts at the bottom and stays there. It warms you up. So now that we've covered that, let's talk about the 3 common tiny house heating methods. And there are a number of pros and cons to each of them. First, let's talk about propane. That's the big one. So here it is. on our screen. Propane is the first. It is vented or unvented. It's thermostat controlled. It burns really cleanly. It doesn't necessarily heat the whole house because that heat is going to the top. If you have a loft in your tiny home, you're going to be very warm up there and could be very cool down below. It's got a medium to high initial cost for installation. And for some people, it uses fossil fuels, and they would prefer not to do that, at least not as much as, or as little as possible. The next common method is the wood stove. And one of the pros of a wood stove is it's very cozy. It's very welcoming. But there are some other challenges here. It can be, well, it's also very good for cooking or for cleaning. Can be lower impact on the environment depending on which fuel you want to use. And the fuel is generally cheap. If you just go and cut the wood pellets might be a different story. Still, a wood stove has the same challenges in that it does not evenly heat your house. It's going to be very warm near the wood stove because that will radiate. It'll be a little cooler farther away. Again, it has a medium to high initial cost. You need a fair amount of clearances from the wall, and that can be a challenge from, you have limited floor space, right? So if you have clearance setbacks from the wall, then you're taking up a lot of floor space in your tiny house. It's also going to be a fire hazard, and sometimes disposing of the ashes can be kind of messy. The third common type of heat is the mini split. Now, mini splits are very popular for a lot of good reasons in the tiny house industry. They're also popular in the RV industry. One of the things is that it heats and cools. It's also thermostat controlled. It takes up less floor space, and it's very efficient. Now, there's some challenges, and it's, again, not evenly heating the house. It's got a pretty high initial cost. It needs more professional installation, more professional help than many methods. It doesn't work well in a very cold climate, and I've missed one other point here. I'm sorry, got to read all my slides. It needs to be drained from time to time, and it's about 30% higher cost than other heating cooling methods. Let's talk about radiant floor heat. Radiant floor heat has 100% even heating with no cold spots. Can you back up on the slide? Back up on slide. Okay. It's got thermostat controlled zones, so you can have multiple zones within your. There we go. Great. We have 100%. We have thermostat controlled zones. It takes zero floor space. It helps prevent mold and condensation. And then it's hypoallergenic. There's no fans. It's therapeutic. So if you have cold, cranky joints, it helps you get out of bed and in the morning and get out of the chair. It's cost effective and very efficient. And it's installed under a lot of different types of flooring. There are some cons to radiant floor heat. One of them is it's not particularly practical off-grid because of the power requirements. It requires electricity. It has a higher initial cost, but then runs very efficiently afterward. Still requires professional installation with both tile professionals or flooring professionals and electrical professionals. We don't recommend it in really cold climates. It'd be more of a supplemental heat, and it cannot be installed under current existing material. You have to remodel your existing tiny house if you want to add it after the fact. All right. So, are we back? We're back. Here I am. Great. So how are you going to keep the heat where you are with radiant floor heat? Radiant floor heat fills in the blanks with what other heating methods in the tiny house world are lacking, especially evenly heating a tiny house with no warm or cold spots anywhere. So let's talk about the different kinds of electric radiant heat. So slide. No slide yet? No slide. It's live. So hydronic heat is one method, and that can take 30 plus minutes. No, hydronic can take 2 hours to warm up. We had an RV salesman tell us one that warms up in only 2 hours. So if the salesman is saying it takes 2 hours, then it might take substantially longer than that. It's not ideal for night setbacks. If you want to have a cooler temperature at night, it's hard because it takes a long time to heat up. It's going to take a long time to cool down. It's going to have hot and cold spots because the loop for hydronics, they tend to be 16 inches apart. So that gap in between is going to be colder than where the hot water is on the pipes. So it gets hot and cold spots on your floor. The other challenge is that it requires a lot more maintenance. It's water-based, so you have to flush it and replenish it and make sure there's no leaks. If there's ever a leak in the pipes, you have to get to it under the subfloor, and that's very difficult in a tiny house because under the subfloor, you'll have a lot of steel frame, a lot of other mechanical difficulties because it's built on a steel trailer, right? There's no crawl space to work with, so it's just harder to access. It's got fairly high upfront installation costs because you're routing all of these pipes, and they have to be fairly precisely located and protected against this 5.2 earthquake to make sure they don't spring a leak. Requires careful planning before installation, really careful planning. If you want to refit your floor, you have to pull it all the way up. You have to pull out the flooring and the subfloor pipes underneath that. And it's water-based. We said that, right? It's water-based, so it doesn't travel well. It's heavy. On the other hand, electric radiant floor heat heats up in 30 minutes, very quickly. You don't lose any floor space, requires no maintenance. It's simple planning because it goes above your subfloor. Very simple planning before installation. You can install it on top of your subfloor under new flooring, or even as part of a remodel. It's very simple to take off what floor you have, linoleum or whatever you want to replace, and put the electric radiant floor heat under that. And I think now we're ready for the next slide. Yes, here we are. So let's examine some of the electric radiant floor heat installation methods. One of them is, the first on our table here, is cable and strip. Cable and strip has a number of little holding clips that you run a cable back and forth. It takes a while to install that. It supports really complex floor plans pretty simply, but it's not one-step installation. If you want to tile over it that day, you might be able to, you might not. It has a decent little profile. It's really hard to service, and diagnostics are open question mark, depending on who's helping you with it. Cable and membrane is a slightly different product. Cable and membrane, you have this grid membrane you put down on the floor, and you route the cable back and forth. The install speed is also fairly slow. It still supports complex floor plans. It is not one-step installation. You're just not going to be able to install the same day, tile or anything else over it. It's a little bit higher profile than cable and strip. It is not very serviceable. And again, diagnostics are an open question mark. Then there's the roll mats that you can buy. A lot of people call this roll cut flip product. It is a little bit faster to install than the cable, but not much. It does not support anywhere near as complex floor plans. It really wants to be rectangular because of the flip. It's a little bit faster to install because you can pour your thin set or SLC, self-leveling compound, right through the product. Still can't tile on the same day because it takes a while to put it down. It has a very low profile. Not serviceable, and diagnostics, again, open. We don't know if it can be serviced or not. Some of them will tell you it can't be serviced. Then we have what's called a two-step custom method. And these are mats that include a solid fabric, which really include a moisture barrier. So you have to put thin set or SLC on both sides of it. So you have to wait for both to set. So the install speed is fast and it supports complex floor plans. But the installation is not one step, so you cannot tile the same day. You have to wait from time to time between the two thin set pours. It's not very low profile. It is, the manufacturer will tell you it is not serviceable and there are no diagnostics. Then there is the one-step custom installation method. It's very fast to install, supports complex floor plans. Because it's one step, you pour thin set or SLC straight through the mesh. It's very fast to install. You can tile the same day. It is very low profile. It is also maybe serviceable and maybe has diagnostics depending on who you get it from. So before we continue, does anyone have any questions they'd like to put into the chat box that we can address before we move on to tiny homes in particular? There's one. Or grab the mic. Yes, if you are using Run the World, you can also, if your audio is set up, you can ask questions live and we'd be happy to take live questions.
There is some confusing info out there about infrared, with many claiming it uses less electricity than radiant mats. Can you speak to the electrical usage?
So when you say infrared, you're talking infrared lamps? As
Probably quartz heaters?
The quartz heaters. It depends on the individual heater. I think it's
Far infrared mats.
Far infrared mats. That's not that technology I'm not particularly familiar with. So maybe some of the folks on our chat answers can answer that later. Do some research, or if you have any questions or have some specifics, you can give us a ring at our service number. We can help walk you through some of that.
That's cost including installation.
Cost including installation. So the builder's price on floor heat. Let's cover that a little bit later because there's a couple different technologies. There's two different products that we offer, and the products are a little bit different. So we will get back to that in both sessions for both black gold and gold heat products later in our workshop. All right. So why is radiant floor heat a must for a tiny house? By far, radiant floor heat has the most multifunctional benefits for a tiny house. Number one is it doesn't take up any additional space. Look, you're in a tiny house, right? You've got no more than 399 square feet. Giving up 3 square feet, 4 square feet for setbacks on a wood stove is 4 square feet that you could have used for something else. A topic that's been if you don't mind me saying, a hot topic at Thea is condensation. Condensation, mold, driving moisture out of the subfloor and out of the nooks and crannies of your tiny home is a big deal. Well, radiant floor heat helps drive all that condensation out. So it's just, not only does it make it so you don't have no dry rot, it also means you have no mold. So those of you that are worried about mold sensitivities, this goes away. So you know how important it is to keep condensation out. Well, this is how we do it. Remember, you have no slab. You have no slab in a tiny house. So the water is going to come up from underneath. The third point is tiny house for benefit for a tiny house because it's small. Radiant floor heat is silent. If you have a small space, that fan is going to make a lot of noise and be everywhere. So if you can heat your house on radiant alone, if it's not super cold out, then it's super quiet because it's electricity. Also hyperallergenic. Radiant floor heat is not blowing, doesn't have fans, so it's not blowing things around. And it's also very scalable. So we can make, or actually most radiant floor heat mats can make size, all shapes and sizes. So you can make it as big or as small as you need to. Biggest benefit though is there's no hot and cold spots through the house. You can put the radiant heat wherever you need it to go, including the bathroom. Who doesn't like a warm toilet? So you get that with radiant floor heat. When should you consider? So you're working on a tiny house project. When should you consider your design choices and your selection of radiant floor heat? Well, like most other things, as early as possible. The earlier, the better. When you figure out that you might want radiant floor heat, there's a lot of questions that you need to start asking. And if you're going to live in it, we recommend you work with a builder. If you're a builder that's taken time to come to this session, thank you. Delighted you're here. This is how you can help your customers, your clients, get the very best result from the radiant floor heat. There's a bunch of questions that you want to ask yourselves. One is, what kind of flooring are you going to use? Are you going to use tile? Are you going to use luxury vinyl plank? Are you going to use luxury vinyl tile? Are you going to use sheet linoleum? All these questions that you have to know what you want, and that helps you choose which product you have. Is your floor plan complicated, or is it a rectangular design? Knowing which is which will help you choose a product. And one might help with the other. If you have a complicated floor plan, it might push you to one kind of radiant product. And if you have a certain floor, it might push you to a floor material, it might push you to another one. So there's some trade-offs you want to discuss as early as possible before you've bought all your tile. If you're planning for radiant floor heat, you need to be talking about a power budget. How much power can your electrical system handle? And that will tell you how much heat you can put in on that power budget. Do you want multiple zones in your floor heat? Do you want your bathroom on a separate zone than on your living room? That's more things to think about what you want in your tiny house. If you're selecting luxury vinyl tile or luxury vinyl plank, or in some cases sheet linoleum, a number of the manufacturers have limits on how much radiant floor heat you can have. Oftentimes, they'll ask you to limit the floor heat to 82 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, about that, which is really no warmer than direct sunlight coming through the window on a bright day. But it's something that you want to be discussing with the builder to make sure you have all the pieces in place. There are some radiant pro tips and no-nos. You only put radiant floor heat on the floor. You never put it underneath your dishwasher, cabinets, bookshelves. You put it where you're going to be, where it's free to, for lack of a better term, free to breathe. Dog beds are one of our biggest problems because dogs don't like to be in it because it's too hot. Hilarious, but true. That insulation of the dog bed creates a hot spot underneath that dog bed because the heat can't radiate out. There are platforms to put the dog beds, which will make the dog and your floor very, very happy. Thick rugs can be a problem as long as you don't exceed about equivalent R1, insulation R1, you should be okay. In the radiant heat space, we prefer throw rugs if you want to put that down on your radiant floor heat product. So before we continue, I've seen that there's been a lot of chat questions, but are there any other questions that we should pause and cover before we move on to our product introductions?
Question that's been partially answered about programmable thermostats. More later.
Yeah, so the question about the programmable thermostats, and we'll talk thermostats a little bit later in the presentation when Kyle's up. We'll introduce Kyle in a few minutes. Anything else?
About watts per square foot, which has been covered.
Well, let's talk about that. We're limited by code to 15 watts per square foot, and we come right up to that. There's a lot of things that we're going to cover as we go through. Is there anything, Kyle, that we wanted to cover? Awesome. So now I'd like to introduce you to our two different products. We're going to start with Black Gold. And these products, these products are very well suited to the tiny house industry because of our experience with RVs and how similar RVs to tiny house. We have a lot of experience, and we've used a lot of experience. Been at this quite a while. So our first product we'll talk about today is Black Gold. Black Gold is a thin film product. You can see it on the screen here. It's got our custom connections at the lower right-hand corner. It's a lightweight carbon-based film. It's cut and pre-terminated. It's cut on 10-inch long boundaries, so you can get 10-inch or 20-inch or 30-inch long strips. And these strips are 10 inches or 20 inches wide. Does not require thin set or an SLC, so you can attach these to your subfloor by adhesive, spray adhesive, by glue, by staples, as long as you don't put it in the clear part and not the conducting part. And it adds only a 1/16 of an inch or less to your flooring stack up. So what are the specifications of Black Gold? We offer Black Gold in both 120 volt and 240 volt line power. It runs 15 watts per square foot, or just a little bit less. Again, it's available in 10 or 20 inch widths, and it's available up to 35 feet long. There's some other limits we can talk about. 35 feet will be plenty for any tiny house application I'm familiar with. We give pre-terminated cold leads of 10, 15, or 20 feet, and this is important when you are designing for your tiny house installation. The termination is such that it gives a perfectly flat floor above the film. So if you're using a sheet vinyl product, you can barely tell that the Black Gold is there. There's no special connector required. We take care of that for you. You get the hot and neutral lead ready to put into your thermostat. Multiple film panels can be hooked together in the junction box, hooked in parallel and go to the same thermostat. Can power about 1,800 watts on a 120 volt system, 3,600 watts on a 240 volt system. That's a limit of the thermostat switching that we can provide. So, what kind of flooring materials can you use with Black Gold? You can put it under LVP, LVT, luxury vinyl plank and tile, sheet vinyl, laminate, many woods, thin carpets, and have somebody else, give us a ring. We can help you out. We can talk it through. And if you need thermostats, we can help you with that too. So is Black Gold right for my tiny house? Black Gold works best when you have something a floor where you can have 10 and 20 inch wide strips going down the floor, cut at 10 or 20 inch wide. So if you have a 14 inch wide part of your floor, then you'll have 10 inches going down the center and 2 inch gap on either side. Kyle will talk that through with you. So I'd like to bring Kyle up. He will introduce himself, and he is a design engineer at Gold Heat, and he's going to walk you through the design and installation process of our product, Black Gold product. Kyle, take it away.
Hello. So as Brian mentioned, we're going to talk about how to plan and measure, and then as well as actually show you a basic installation for Gold Heat's Black Gold Radiant Heat Film. So to start with, we're going to look at a floor plan that was done by actually a tiny house company you may be familiar with, brought up right now. But not too long ago, we did a Black Gold installation with Tumbleweed Tiny Homes out of Colorado. So what you see here is actually a layout for one of their tiny homes. And as you can see, there are rectangles placed in on the drawing. And those, the orange rectangles there, are representing different Black Gold panels. So you can see there's a combination of our 20-inch wide, which you can see along the left there, and some 10-inch wide, as you can, this one 10-inch panel you can see kind of in the middle. So in this case, what they did is they took their layout and then they selected what Black Gold panels would fit their installation. So, okay, so now we're going to talk about how we go through this process. So what you're seeing here is an example of a floor plan. This actually was for a Sprinter van conversion project. So a little smaller than your average tiny home, but the same kind of idea. A lot of stuff going on here, but what you can kind of see, that part with the semicircle and the square in the upper left, that's a toilet, and then the various appliances and cabinets located around the edges there. So once we have, or you have, your floor plan figured out, what you're going to do is go and figure out the area you're going to heat. As Brian had mentioned, we don't heat under fixed furniture, cabinets, any other features that are immovable in the space. So in this case, all of the fridge, range, dishwasher, the shower base, the toilet, that's all outside of our heated area. So once you've figured out the area you're going to heat, you're then basically going to sketch in a border, which we do here commonly in red. That's just our practice. So once you have the area that you're going to heat, you now know what area you're going to be fitting panels to. So on Black Gold, the way this works is you as the end user, generally, or designer builder, will take panels out of the list of panels that we provide and fit them in to the space in a way that will work for you. So part of that comes with your power situation. So you'll need to look at where you have power, and that will oftentimes dictate where your thermostat goes. So actually in the last slide, go back here a second, it's a little faint, but you can see the number 1 there by the fridge. That's where we have good power. So that's where we're going to place our thermostat. And that's really helpful to know because that allows you, when you're orienting the panels in your plan, what way is going to work best. So once you know that, you can see here how we've laid out these panels so that they are oriented so that they can reach the power efficiently, minimizing your cold bleed length and the amount of routing you have to do in the subfloor, but also so that the panels fit. So you can see here we've got not quite 100% coverage, but being that most of the space is rectangular, Black Gold fits in the space pretty well. You can see the different combinations of 10 and 20-inch panels in various lengths to fit this space. The little B and W with the little green blocks on the end there, those are just notating where the cold bleed is, so that you can kind of route them such that they will end up where your power is most efficiently. And the numbering there is just the call-outs for the different part numbers. So basically what you'd be able to do is, once you have figured out your stuff and you've got your part numbers, then you can move forward from there. On our website, we have a tab for ordering, specifically with Black Gold, and on there's a list of these panels. It is also under our resources tab in our Black Gold installation manual. It has that same information as well. Now I guess we'll talk about how you actually go about installing Black Gold. Okay, let's see. So we're going back to, so this is a Black Gold panel. We're going to, I'll show you kind of what you get when you're getting in the box here. So switch over to our table view here. Yeah, that's better. So when you get a box of Black Gold, you will have in it your Black Gold panels, which are going to be rolled up like this. This is a 10-inch panel. That's a 20-inch panel. These aren't quite as neat because I had them rolled out earlier, but normally they're rolled up a little nicer than this. And inside, you'll basically have your cold bleeds, your panel itself, and then here, as Brian talked about, we have our pre-terminated ends. And what we're talking about that is, normally there's a connector on these plastic film products that you have to install. You have to cut the panel, you have to press the clip together so it punctures, and you're doing all that, and you're putting a big blocky plastic cover over the top of it. We do all that for you. So these are all pre-connected. They're very thin. They're only 3/16 of an inch, and they're watertight. So you'll be able to get your panel, lay it out, and start installing. Different than most other applications like that. You'll also, if you order a thermostat, your thermostat will be in the box. We touched a little bit on thermostats, but the biggest thing for any thermostat on our products is they need to be line voltage switching. And what that means, if you have 120 power or 240 power, it's directly switching that power on and off from your breaker box. So a typical thermostat only runs on like 5 volts because it's just running a sensing wire to a control box, I guess, for lack of a better word. So that's a little bit different. There are a fair number of options that are line voltage switching, but the biggest thing is when you're doing floor heat, you need to have one that uses a floor heating sensor. So it's regulating to the floor, not to the air. So now that you may have got your panels, you're going to need to know what tools and other materials you'll need to do your installation. Generally speaking, on a black gold setup, the stack up of the materials you need is pretty minimal. Normally, you're going to have the material itself, your subfloor, which is right here, this OSB, and then you're going to have your adhesive and a vapor barrier. So the vapor barrier is generally put over the top in black gold to protect the film from your flooring, because oftentimes it's a floating floor if you're doing vinyl or LVP, LVT. In that case, especially because we're doing more for the protection layer than the vapor barrier, we really recommend a minimum of a 5 mil material. That's still pretty standard, but a lot of stuff is only like 2 or 3 mil. If you're going over concrete, you may also be running a vapor barrier underneath the panel as well. So before you start installing, the biggest thing you're going to want to do is make sure your surface is clean. So if you're going over like a concrete or other uneven floor, you want to make sure there's no rough spots that you need to take care of. If you're going straight over regular OSB, you're pretty much fine, other than making sure you got nail heads or flush, screws, etc. And before you do your installation, you'll ideally in your design phase, but if you haven't, you're going to make sure you know where you're routing your power to. And that will, of course, dictate how you're going to go about your install. Some of the do's and don'ts, as Brian had mentioned, you can put this stuff down with staples. If you do, you want to keep it out in this edge where it's clear, because you'll see, it shows up fairly well on the camera, you've got a clear edge here, and then you've got a copper strip, and then you have the carbon bands that heat up in the middle. So if you're putting any sort of fasteners, you want it to be in that plastic edge. You also don't want to overlap them. You can overlap the clear parts, but you don't want to overlap the copper. So the heating parts need to not be overlapped. As far as maintenance goes, as I believe Ken had mentioned in some of the comments, as with either of our systems, there are only one moving part, which is the relay switch inside the thermostat. So it's virtually maintenance-free. As far as power requirements, it is 15 watts per square foot, as we've mentioned before. In a typical setting, that gives you about 100, 110 square feet on 120 and 240 on, or 220 square feet on 240 volts, give or take. Got to remember, though, that's heated square footage, not basic area square footage. So like when we have those layouts before, if that's like a 300 square foot overall area, 10 by 30, the reality for the actual heated area is somewhere near around a third of that, we kind of found as a rule of thumb. So when you're looking at your costing and how much heat you may need for your tiny home, just realize that all of that space occupied by stuff that doesn't move does minimize that area you're heating. As far as your floor construction, the typical stuff is right over the top of a subfloor. Depending on the materials you're using, the stack up can vary a little bit. If you've got something that's a little different than OSB, just reach out to us. You can contact us through our website, www.goldheat.com, or reach out to us at our service number or design@goldheat.com for an email address. That's kind of the biggest ones. As far as there are some clearances you need to be aware of. That's mostly we just pull the heat in from the borders of the room. So if this is the border of your room, you don't want the heat all the way right up against the edge. You're probably going to end up pulling it in 2-3 inches just to provide a little clearance. Also, just the fact that the edges generally aren't where you're standing, so you don't necessarily need the heat there. So those are kind of the biggest things as far as design considerations. So now that we're going to actually install them, you've got your mats, you've got where your power is going, but how to actually wire it into your heating system. So what we kind of recommend generally, and this will hopefully help explain it a little bit. What we're looking at here, this is like a steel plate, and this is a joist in your wall. The thermostats, all the line voltage thermostats we work with fit in the standard single-size junction box, and that generally gets mounted up, around light switch level. But then you have to get your power from the floor to your thermostat. And in Black Gold, you're going to have generally a whole series of panels that you're tying together in parallel to hook up to your thermostat itself. So we generally take care of that using a junction box. This is a double gang. Sometimes you'll need to do a triple or a quad, depending on what you're using. And this gives you a space to make all of those ties together, or use something like this, which is a terminal block. So you can mount the terminal block down in the box, pull all your panels together, and then pull your power wires up to the thermostat. We use 2 raceways because, as we mentioned before, you have a temperature floor sensor for your thermostat, and we run one piece of conduit, in this case for the temperature sensor, and a separate one for the power wires. This, depending on your region, may actually be code, but the reason we suggest it is it keeps the thermostat wire from getting crosstalk from the AC power voltage, so you can get some really weird anomalies sometimes when you have that alternating current causing some weird sensing stuff on your floor sensor. Okay. So now that you're going to actually be ready to install your floor, you're going to place your floor sensor. In this case, on our layout here, we're going to be putting 2 panels down. So I've got a piece of 20-inch wide here and a piece of 10-inch wide. And you kind of see the cutout here in the corner. That's mostly just to show how we're fitting different size panels into space around a feature, like if this was the corner of counter or something. So because we're putting our panels this way, we're going to end up pulling our power out over here. This would be where our thermostat would be. So somewhere close to that is where we're going to want to place our temperature sensor for the floor. This is a temperature sensor here. It's kind of a skinny wire, kind of like speaker wire, and on the end of it there's this little 1/8 inch or so diameter, 1 inch long little probe. On Black Gold, what you're going to do is actually have it placed under the edge of the mat and under the heater bands, routed into a pocket. So once we know that, we'll be able to place that, and then we'll place our mats, and then we'll start marking so that we can route where we're going to have our grooves to run the power wires. We'll show a little bit different method of installing the temperature sensor when we talk about Black or Gold Heat, but for now we'll just cover the basic one. So we'll start with laying everything out here, and then we'll route some pockets and talk about attaching stuff. So some of the tools you're probably going to need for this are going to be a template, which we can provide, which is so that you can easily route out the pockets for the thin terminations. Some form of spray adhesive. We generally use a 3M90 or 94. It comes in rattle cans or in larger containers with a spray gun. The even numbers are good on 3M products because they don't leave all the little stringy stuff hanging in the air. They splatter out good on the surface and just leave a lot less mess to deal with. You could have your vapor barrier that you end up using over the top, or in some stack-ups you'd use under the bottom as well. You're going to need a router. We just use a small trim router. Works pretty well, 3/8 router bit. Nothing too special. Hot glue gun. This is mostly for tacking your wires down in place, and temperature sensor. Just fairly handy in general. You can use other things. You could use tape to put stuff down as long as it's good for 150 degrees or so. Some sort of marking deal for marking your pockets. Doing anything electrical, a multimeter is going to be your friend. So that's good in doing your various tests you're going to need to do to make sure everything's happy. So now that you've got everything that you need gathered up and you know how you're going to lay out the panel, we'll actually start marking stuff here. So in this case, we're going to bring our panels to the outer edge to leave a space to route the wires. And then we're going to mark kind of the edge of where the terminations are so that we can use our template easily. Mark the corners here. And get these guys pulled out of the way. We also are going to mark where our thermostat probe is going to go. So in this case, I'm just going to put it in under the edge here. So super picky where, we'll just mark ourselves there. Now that we've done that, get all this stuff moved out of the way for a moment. Okay, so our template we have here works for both our 10-inch and the 20-inch wide. So in this case, since I marked my corners here, bring it over and line it up, and draw through so we know where we're going to be. Then we've got our 20-inch, so we're going to use the other end here. Then we've got that spot we've marked. We're going to put a pocket in there for the thermostat probe. Then we also have the wires we need to bring out. So we're going to route a groove that comes across here between these two, comes out, comes over, where our junction boxes would be if we had an actual wall here. I'm going to do the same thing for our 20-inch panel. Come across here. And then we can also bring our temperature sensor out over to the same spot. Once we've got that figured out, we're actually going to start routing the pockets here. Set up here. You're also going to want to shop vac to clean up all your dust, because as we mentioned before, you're going to have you want a nice clean surface to attach the panels to. Now let's see how we did for fit up here. Maybe a little bit of minor adjusting. Oh, looks like we got that one okay. So you can kind of see how we'll fit our wires down in the grooves and how our panels fit in the pockets we cut. Panel there. Make sure that we worked out okay here. Yep. Good. So now that we've done that, we're ready to actually install our temperature sensor, and then we'll move on to doing our panels. So, as I mentioned before, what we'll do is we're going to be fitting it down here in this little pocket here. And all we're going to do is use a little hot glue to hold this in place. One trick you can do with the hot glue too is use something metal to help it set up real quick, as long as it uses kind of like a heat sink. In that case, at our home. Normally we tack the wires down, but we've got some other wires to run in here first, so we'll just leave that loose. So now when it comes down to the panels, you're going to use your contact adhesive. Normally in contact adhesive land, you really like to coat the one surface, coat the back side, and then let it tack up and then lay it down. For this, since we don't really want to wait the 5 or plus minutes for it to tack up, we're just going to spray the one surface and lay it down. Works fairly well for something like this. If you're doing a big area, you'd want to be a little bit more careful in how you're doing it. So, start by sticking our terminations down in the pockets we created. Then laying our panel down. Pressing and doing this. You could also use something like a paint roller or a brayer roller for printmaking. A lighter, not one of the heavy, excuse me, one of the heavy weighted flooring rollers would work as well. Weighted ones would be a little bit overkill, but didn't get quite enough adhesive here on the corner. Just use a weight here to hold that for the moment. Same deal on our 20-inch panel here. Get our terminations there in and lay our panel out. Nice thing about contact adhesive over glue or staples is it gives you a little bit more freedom to peel up and get everything laying flat. Pushing the limits of the contact adhesive a little bit here for this example, but normally if you let it tack up a little more, it would stay down a little bit better. So now you can get all your wires run down, so we're just going to work and basically pop them in our grooves. If you got more panels running together down a wire run, you're going to end up running bigger, wider pockets. But in this case, we only got the 2 panels, so it's okay. Temperature sensor, get that tucked down in there. Run our wires here. also a little easier when you have all your cold leads run out. These are still coiled up. Set up a bit, and should be good to go. So now at this point, you're basically just ready to lay your vapor barrier out on the top, in which case we do actually recommend that the whole vapor barrier be glued down, because the whole point is that it's not going to move, so it provides a protectant for your panels. Before we do that, though, what we'll do is confirm that all of our panels are still good and happy after our install process. Could have also done this initially when it came out of the box as well. For this, we'll just use our multimeter set up for ohms. You'll notice on the tag on the end here, we have the product information, and on the back, it has voltage the panel's rated for, as well as the part number, and in the bottom it says ohms, which is the resistance. So we'll clip on, going between the white and the black. Just verify that we've got good measurements. So this panel should have 720 ohms. We're reading out at 717. That's fine. It's going to vary a little bit based on temperature. So when I say nominally, that's what we're talking about. You know, it's pretty close. There will be those variations. So in that case, that panel's good. Our other panel here should be 268. And got 267.5. So real nice and close. One thing that's really helpful is having a multimeter that has clips on the end rather than just the regular pointy probes, because when you hold them and you're grabbing between your fingers, if you're taking something that should be like open circuit, you're actually going to start measuring through your body and it'll give you a false reading. So never, never, never measure through your fingers. Okay, now that we know that that's good, at this point, as long as your glue is set up, you could actually wire in and power up the panels just to make sure everything works. Or you can just continue on with your install. As long as you've got good resistances, it means your mats are healthy. So in that case, what you would do to move forward would be spray out your surface and glue out your vapor barrier over the top. Once you have that done, then you just lay your floor on top. If you're using a floating floor, you can go right over here. Glue down, so you may or may not need the vapor barrier depending on material. That's kind of consult your flooring material specifications. Generally speaking, almost any vinyl product calls for a vapor barrier underneath it. In this case, though, we are especially using the vapor barrier to protect the abrasion on the top of the panels. And as I've mentioned, depending on the stack up, you may also need a vapor barrier underneath. If you're going right over concrete, you're going to want to do that to keep the moisture from your slab from coming up into your floor, and then still the vapor barrier on top to protect the panels. Okay, so as far as now you've got your install, what can go wrong? Really with flat gold, there's not much that can go wrong. All you've got are the really cutting a wire or having a failed thermostat. Failed thermostats are usually fairly easy to diagnose. You can use your multimeter, and you're going to be verifying that you're getting good power on the output side and power on the input side. You can also have a faulty floor sensor, in which case sometimes you're going to have to, under an install like this, you would need to lift up some flooring and place a new temperature probe, which is something that we will address with our other method of installing them. The only other real thing is if somebody manages to cut a wire. In that case, it's pretty straightforward repair. You got to find your wire and splice it back together. But To reiterate, the process is pretty straightforward. The system's designed so that you as the builder, designer, end user can take your layout, whether you've created one as a CAD model or if you've drawn a scaled sketch or however, and then select the panels that are going to fit in the space. And then from there, you can reach out to us either through our website or directly through our email at design@goldpeat.com. And with those panels you need, the cold bleed lengths, which as we said are 10, 15, and 20 are standard lengths. Those are called out at the end of the part number with an A, B, or C. And as long as we have that information, we can get a quote together for you. You're also welcome to send across a drawing of or a copy of your sketch, and we'll happily provide some input as to whether or not setup looks like it's going to work well. You, generally speaking, the only kind of things we really have a lot of feedback on are you could lay your panels out orientation-wise a little better so you don't have to route as many grooves. But generally speaking, people's layouts tend to work pretty well. If you look at our website, under our resources tab, we have spec sheets for home builders as well as brochures to share with clients if you're a builder and you have people looking at it. We also have the product installation manual that goes into all of these steps in way more detail. That website is www.goldpeat.com. So now we'll just bring Brian back up and we'll do some questions and answers if you guys have any. You can either grab a mic or Jim and Ken are still fielding questions there, so we may not have too many.
Don't see any mics up here yet. Can you grab the mic request yet? I think Kyle's going to go drive the Q&A, and he's going to shout out questions as they come across.
Do the panels have an internal overtemp protection? So to answer that, no, they do not, and that's why we use the floor temperature sensor. The thermostats also have a high temp limit that you can set. So if your flooring material is only rated for 85 degrees, you can set that limit, which limits the flooring, the temperature in the floor. Generally speaking, most relays, like what are used in these thermostats tend to fail open rather than closed. Not always, but most of the time they do. So that means you're more likely to have a floor that doesn't work rather than one that's stuck on all the time. The thermostats are also GFI protected. So you're going to, if you have a puncture or some other thing, you're going to trip that, as well as you're still protected by your circuit breaker. On these thermostats, they will nominally draw about 15 amps at the 120 volts or 220, 240. So you're going to want to put it on a 20 amp breaker in your panel because if it's running right at that limit, you'll trip for 15.
I'm going to let you answer questions. I'm going to read out the questions.
So hopefully that answered that question.
He said, thank you. Talking about recommendations for thermostats, we can provide some, obviously.
We can provide some. Our standard thermostat, which does have some bearing in these in the tiny home on wheel applications, is a non-programmable thermostat. A lot of people really like programmable thermostats and are used to them in their homes, but the problem is the program settings are usually in what's called volatile memory, which means when you lose power, it loses all the thermostat settings. So if you're in something where you're going to be frequently disconnecting your power, moving your tiny home, etc., you do not want a programmable thermostat, or if so, you're going to really want to try to find one that has that stuff stored in memory that doesn't get lost. We've done a fair amount of research on that and haven't really found a great candidate, but we're pretty happy with our plain Jane basic thermostat that we generally use in the RV world. Mostly because you don't have that problem. You just turn the power on, turn the thermostat on, 2 buttons, up, down for temperature, turn it off by holding both, or reset the GFI on the side.
Now we've got a pricing question, so I get to jump in and take the pricing questions.
Yep.
As someone's asking on just general pricing, rule of thumb is a little bit under $8 a square feet. It's a little bit more than that for the smaller panels because there's some connections and that costs money too. But you can count on just a little bit under $8 a square foot, except for the very smallest. the 10 and 20 inch, 30 inch long panels be a little bit more.
What type of brand of thermostats do you recommend? We have a Sanofi. We're evaluating Gojira.
We on the floor that we're standing on right now, we use a Sanofi thermostat. We ship the Sanofi thermostats. We have those available for resale. And we're evaluating a couple of others. Again, the key part of any thermostat that you use in a heated floor is it has to be able to talk to the floor sensor. That's super important.
We had a question about could it be used in a meditation hall or something like that. You can use it anywhere.
Not sure it makes a meditation hall special, other than it needs heat. So yes, what's obvious, if I'm doing something even resembling meditation, I want it to be quiet, and that's where Gold Heat and Black Gold just shine because it is silent. The other question.
Should I have a water leak? Will the panel be water damaged?
No,
in the case of Black Gold, the answer is no.
These are waterproof. Sealed. Yeah, this is all sealed. It's not rated to run underwater because electricians hate that. But if this gets wet, you'd be worried more about your floor and subfloor than you would about the Black Gold product.
Got a question about expansion spaces.
Yes. Kyle.
Yes, you touched a very good question there. So with vinyl, especially vinyl floating floors, they always give out an edge gap you need, usually 1/4 or 3/8 of an inch. Vinyl floors move around a lot, just in the regular temperature cycles of the day, and that's not including a floor heating situation. So yes, you want to make sure you follow those instructions in the manufacturer's specifications, and probably err a little bit on the larger side than the smaller side if you have the choice, and just cover it up with your trim. The other important thing is to leave that gap all the way around all the edges rather than just on the one edge. We did have one installation where somebody did they put it tight on one edge and expected it to creep all the way across and ended up ending up with some buckles because they didn't leave that edge gap. You have to remember that almost all vinyl stuff, if it is rated for radiant heat, will have a limit of probably 80, 85 degrees. As Brian had mentioned, really that's about as hot or even a bit cooler than your floor is going to get in the sun through a window in the summer. With that in mind, you can put pretty much anything on top of it. We, of course, always have to recommend that you follow the manufacturer's specifications. But you're fairly safe as long as you set a limit to 80 to 85 degrees. Don't exceed that.
Looks like we're getting to the end of the questions. There was one question about asking what our standard lead time. We'd like a week to be able to produce a ship product, just because we never know exactly how much work we have in a given day. So if a week, we can always make a shipment in there. So it's not like we need to custom order this and have it shipped in from goodness knows where. We can produce it, add the wires right away, and ship them off to you. Kyle, anything else on the questions?
We had a little more dog bed question.
No dog bed question.
So the biggest reason on the dog bed thing, you're not the flooring material or the heating material itself isn't going to be damaged by that overheat of having that insulation on top. The most common one with the dog bed is that the dogs don't like to sleep in it because it gets too warm. Generally speaking, if you're in the vinyl world, you're going to have more of a problem with the hot spot than if you were doing tile or even some engineered hardwoods. But mostly we talk about hot spots more in the fact that when you move the item, there's going to be a spot that's noticeably warmer. And except for very extreme situations, it's not going to shouldn't cause any damage. But mostly it's just you'll notice that difference. And that's the same thing with the R1 value. The more insulation you have, the more likely you could damage the floor. Generally speaking, it's not the heating material, but your flooring material. So the question as to whether or not that's true for under a mattress in a loft. If your mattress is raised off the floor and you've got an air gap, not a problem. If you were going to be putting it right on the floor surface, you would probably want to design it so that the heat area goes around the edges of the bed. In the RV world, that's generally what we do. We heat down the sides and across the foot of the bed, but beds are usually on a pedestal, so you don't heat that area.
Someone wanted to know if we charge extra to go to New York. No?
I'll go.
I'll go. We'll ship in the 50 states. And some people are asking about adding to the mailing list. Also, the web page, where is this going to be posted? The video we posted originally on the tinyhouse.com, and then we'll be updating that also on the Gold Heat website and our social media channels. We have to put back into it's kind of interesting. The videos we played will be we'll have to add in after the fact because the Run the World application does not retain videos that we attach. So there's a bit of post-production work that we have to do. Everything that we show today is on our YouTube channel, so that makes it pretty straightforward. So here's what we like to do, gang. Thank you. It's time for us to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about our Gold Heat product. So Kyle, if you would mute the microphone and hide the screen just a minute, we'll just take 5 minutes, and then we'll be back talking about Gold Heat. Thanks. Hey, welcome back. We've had a chance to reset the table, get ready for Gold Heat. So hope you had a good break. Hope you're enjoying the presentation so far. So now we come to our flagship product, and I want to remind people that review on why we did Gold Heat. This is a product designed to be installed very quickly under very complicated floor plans in a way that supports all the manufacturing needs of someone that wants to get something done fast because time is money. Also remember that this product is made and designed, manufactured, and supported from our offices in Portland, Oregon. Gold Heat is made up of heating wire and fiberglass fabric. So that's why you're able to pour thin set or SLC through it to make things work. And the flooring that works best with Gold Heat is tile or luxury vinyl tile, luxury vinyl plank, where you can use a thin set or a self-leveling compound because we encase the Gold Heat product, the Gold Heat mesh, into either thin set or SLC. So let's bring up the slide that shows what the stack up looks like. And what we have here, this is the tile example. Here we go. Awesome. Great. So it shows here we have a subfloor. We have the floor heat, the Gold Heat Radiant Floor Heat mat. The heating wires and the mesh fabric are in part of that. Then we have the setting compound, thin set or SLC. And on top of that goes the tile. You can see the tile with the grout. So let's talk about what's involved with the Gold Heat mat. Slide, please. Awesome. So let's talk about the specifications for Gold Heat. Like Black Gold, this is UL and CSA rated. And there's a number of other elements about this that are important. We support 120 and 240 volts, even 208 volts. Fun fact, one of our RV customers uses our mats in a 208 volt system industrial setting to dry some of their product. They actually use it to drive moisture out of some of their products. So if it dries it out of their product in a manufacturing setting, imagine what it would do for your tiny house to drive condensation out. Similar to Black Gold, Gold Heat is good for 15 watts per square foot. It can be as wide as 91 inches. Maximum length's about 25 feet, a little bit more. Depends on the setting. Again, enough for any tiny house I'm familiar with. Standard cold lead lengths are 6, 10, and 20 feet. And again, because of the thermostat limits, we're looking at 1,800 watts in a 120 volt system or 3,600 watts in a 240 volt system per zone, per thermostat. The minimum area is about 3 square feet because of how our wire works in a 120 volt system, about 6 square feet for 240 volt system, and maximum is 108 or 216 square feet for the largest size, 120 and 240 volts respectively. And this is all made in Hillsboro, Oregon. Fun little fact, we're exhibiting recently at the International Builder Show, IBSX, the virtual show, and we were a finalist for Best New Indoor Product. Very impressed by how easy this was to install and so now we're back to me. Are we back to it's live? So the Gold Heat is our flagship product. Now we're back to the comparison matrix. There we go. So we talked earlier about cable and strip products, cable and membrane. And at the end, we talked a little bit about two-step versus one-step custom installation. What's really important here is that Gold Heat is the bottom row. We have very fast install speed, support very complex floor plans. It's one-step installation. You tack down the mat. Kyle will show you how, and pour thin set right through it. You can tile the very same day. When we did this workshop, we did that. We put the floor down, the cold heat down, and we tile the same day. Very low profile. Our mats are serviceable. If someone puts a nail through the mat, and it happens more often in the RV business than the RV manufacturers would like, we can help diagnose it. We have the diagnostic tools, and our mats are repairable. Some of the competition, the manufacturers will tell you flat out, the mats are not repairable. Ours are. That's kind of a thing for us. So let's bring Kyle up to talk about, to show you how he's going to install, plan, measure, and install a Gold Heat Radiant, electric radiant floor heat system. Kyle, your turn.
Okay, so what we'll be showing you guys first here, we'll switch over so that we can see our image here.
What the image?
Yep. And very similar to how we were talking about black gold. We have, here we go. So here we've got a floor plan. So we've got our basic floor plan up top, and then below we have the orange area there, which is the area we want to heat. So similar idea, we're not heating under fixed furniture, walls, cabinets, etc., but beds. But with Gold Heat, we can wrap around everything else. So you'll see how we're going to be wrapping around the toilet there, that little skinny part next to the bed where it comes by the wall, the storage cabinet there. That's what we can do with Gold Heat. If you were doing this with black gold, you would be limited to the rectangular areas. So now this is that same floor plan we were looking at before with that van conversion. So we're going to walk through the steps a little one by one. It's very similar, but the end varies a little bit. So same floor plan exactly we have. When we look at our next slide here, we've picked out our heated area, same heated area as before. There's our border of the heated area. So with Gold Heat, what you're going to do is take your heated border and we're going to inset it 2 inches. So that means the edge of the heat mat will start 2 inches away from the face of the cabinets and around the base of toilets and etc. This allows a couple of things, mostly just so that there isn't heat right up against that surface, but also gives a little more wiggle room in the installation process. Similarly, you will have picked your cold bleed location. We're calling out a 6-foot cold bleed in this case. The nice thing about a Gold Heat mat is you pick the location, and depending on the wire layout, will be within a couple inches generally of that exact spot. So you're not going to be routing a whole bunch of wires around to one location. You're going to have one one cold bleed coming off each mat. So if it was a bigger space that was larger than 91 inches or things like that, it may be 2 mats that come together. So if we go to our next slide here. So what you would be doing is providing that border. So you can provide either the heated border or that border that's stepped in. We just really need to know which one you've done so we don't step it in if you already have. We take that border and then we will lay out the wire grid for that particular space as shown here. So you see the red outline border and then the green wires are the heating wires for that particular. Okay, so how do you submit a floor plan to us? So generally speaking, we do almost everything in CAD, particularly AutoCAD, and we love DXF and DWG files. So if you're working that route and you're working with an architect or something like that, if we can have a DXF file, that works great. What we really prefer in an ideal world is a background layer that has the like in this case where we were seeing the cabinets and the fridge and the toilet and all of that. Then we have your border that's a separate layer that has the heated border. If you're doing it in that case, you will likely have already done that 2-inch in step. You can leave it as a cabinet front. Again, just we need to make sure it's clear either through some form of communication whether you've done that offset or not so we don't do it twice. And then we will take that drawing and create a border, do a wire layout, and send you back a drawing. very similar to what we saw in the last slide, that has the cold bleed length, the design specifications, all of that for you to approve and make sure it will fit your space. Now, that being said, we know not everybody works in CAD, so a scaled drawing, vector PDF, we can also work with. If you're not going to be working with a simple CAD file, even if you are, feel free to reach out to us either through our service line or design@goldheat.com for our email, and we can walk you through what we're going to need, because we're willing to work with you. Those are just our ideals if we can get it. So I'm going to go to our Gold Heat installation table view here. We will show you kind of what you get in your box when you have your Gold Heat installation. So to receive a box, generally speaking, we box them 1 box per mat. Sometimes we do it otherwise, depends on what we're doing and what our customer wants. We have inside the box, what you're going to find is an orange envelope and the heat mat. So in this envelope, you're going to have some important information. You'll have the quick installation guide, which, if you're curious what's in it, is also on our website under the resources tab. This will be covering the basic steps that we are just about to do. It's a great one-stop shop as far as what it takes and what the steps are, with some good illustrations. Good piece of literature to look at. You'll also find what we call the vendor drawing, but in this case it is the drawing that shows the mat along with all the build information. Same drawing that you would approve if you're going to actually, you guys can see that at all, but approve the mat for production. This is the same piece of paper that follows the mat all the way through our production process. So this drawing matches this mat. You'll also find a number of different stickers and labels that are gone over in the quick installation guide what to do with. These documents are important, especially the drawing, so please don't get rid of them. Keep them with your information. It helps with servicing in the future. It helps if you're going to do some sort of remodel. You'll know where stuff is. Just please hold on to it. I know a lot of times people say hold on to it, and that means throw it away. Actually, hold on to these. It helps. That's why it's in a bright orange envelope, yes. So what you'll do is you'll unroll your mat. Generally speaking, you just want to do a quick inspection to make sure there hasn't been any sort of shipping damage. Usually that would be indicated by a box that's less than ideal, but just do a quick look over, make sure there's something that doesn't look anomalous. And then you will also find your thermostat if you ordered one, and at that point you're basically ready to start gathering the tools you need to do your installation. So you're going to need your mat, obviously. A little bit different for doing Gold Heat, but not that much. Generally, you use a staple gun, regular run-of-the-mill 3/8 staple gun. You're going to have your temperature sensor that goes in the floor, installation monitor. We sell these. This is called a loudmouth. You can get them from other sources. Ours are a little better because we pre-package them with the clips, so you don't have to use the little screwdriver to put them in the bottom. Real reusable, really great tool. You're going to need your router again with that same 3/8 bit. Hot glue gun just to tack down your cable routing, and a same deal multimeter to do your electrical checks. In this case, for our temperature sensor, we are going to show you a little different method. So in this case, we'll also have a piece of copper tube. So we're going to show you a video now that shows us laying out our mat and kind of the basic steps you're going to be seeing here when we were doing the studio space that we're standing in right now. That should be going live here in a second. But this shows you kind of exactly how easy it is. We'll be rolling the mat out, rubbing the wires, attaching. You can see here we're wrapping around the toilet, as well as there's actually a floor drain to the right, and we actually go around that floor drain. There's heating wire around the backside of it. So it's similar to like an HVAC vent if you had to do that in the floor. Here we've got our temperature sensor. and starting to put our flooring down there. But this setup was a little bit different because we were working on a concrete slab, so it uses a little different stack up, and that is something that we are happy to talk to you about, the difference. Okay, so now we're ready to actually do our install. So similarly, we will have our location for where our thermostat junction box is. Same kind of setup with using the mock-up here again, single gang box down by the floor. With doing gold heat, you may actually want to go to like a triple gang box or something down at the bottom. What this does is, even though we are more customizable than most on the cold bleed length, we do have regulatory limits, so we cannot actually ship them shorter than 6 feet. As per our ETL listing, CSA listing, you cannot trim a gold heat cold bleed. So this end with the tag and our heat shrink and stuff, you can't cut this off. You can't make it shorter. If you do, it makes it so we have a very hard time servicing the mat in the future. So please don't cut these. That being said, you're probably going to end up with a little extra length. So that's what that lower junction box is for. It gives you a place to coil up the excess after you've made the connection to the thermostat itself. So there's other ways this can be done, but this is our kind of suggested route that has worked pretty well for us. So we're going to unroll our mat here. And in this case, we'll uncoil our cold bleed. We've already done our kind of basic inspection to make sure everything looks happy. Now what we're going to do, similarly to the black gold, we've got our product tag with the part number, voltage, all of that, the amp draw, and our ohms in the bottom corner. So we're going to take our multimeter, set it for ohms. Again, the clips are our friends, so we're not reading our thumbs. Between the white and the black, we are going to hopefully get our resistance, and look at that, we are. And then the other thing that's a little different is we have a ground wire, which is this tinned copper twisted wire. We want to check to make sure that we are getting an open circuit, over limit, infinite resistance, however your meter reads out, between the white and the ground and the black and the ground. What this means that there is no ground fault in the mat, so it's not going to trip your GFI and your thermostat. That does actually bring up a point with your GFI. Our thermostats that we sell are GFI enabled, so you do not want to use a GFI breaker because you don't want to have 2 GFIs on the same circuit. That can do some very strange things. So, good thing to note there. So now that we're sure our mat is happy here, what we're going to do is install our loudmouth, our installation monitor. Anytime you are working on the mat, you want to have this attached and turned on. You've got your green clip for your ground, your white clip, and your black clip, which you hook up, and then you turn on. And what this is going to do is it's going to squeal at you, like when you press the test button. If you cut the wire, damage the mat, crush something causing a ground fault, any of that. And that way you know that you can stop then, and you know where your problem is. Rather than getting it all together, checking it, and going, dang, there's a problem. So this is a very, very good tool. It's reusable. They're not very expensive. They're $35. Please get one. So now that we have our mat hooked up and our mat laid out here on our space, we've got our cold bleed location here. And we're going to need to mark to route for that, because where the cold bleed junction is itself is a little bit thicker than the heating wire itself. The mat overall is going to be about 1/10 to 1/8 of an inch, so fairly thin, low profile. It does get mounted with the heat wire down and the fiberglass mesh on top, so that when you spread the thin set down, it goes through the wire mesh. After it's installed, the wire mesh is really just there to keep all the wires in place. So there's not really a lot of function beyond that after it's installed. So if you need to trim the edges because the edge of the mesh is a little close to something, that's fine. You just don't want to cut the wire itself. So now we've got our cold bleed here. What we're going to do is take our handy dandy Sharpie and just kind of poke through around the joint so that we know where we're going to route. And then also where we're cutting our groove for our cold bleed to go to our junction box. We also need to pick the spot for our temperature sensor. That's where the copper tube comes in. One of our OEM manufacturers uses an installation method where they use a copper tube for their temperature sensor. What this allows you to do is slip the probe down inside of the floor in a manner that you can actually get it back out and swap it out without doing any construction on your floor in the future if you have a failure on your temperature sensor. Not really common, but it does happen. So what you'll be able to do is slip it down inside like this. So in this case, we'll mount our copper tube like this, so it comes in right near our heating wire, and we'll route a groove here, tack that in with the hot glue, and that way you're able to slip this out and replace it if you need to. What we did actually in our showroom here, we just attached our temperature sensors, but because we really didn't want to tear the floor up, we actually installed a second sensor that just runs up and isn't hooked up if there were a problem. We do sell extra sensors. There is a sensor that comes with every thermostat. But the copper tube method is a great way to just not have to worry about that. So we'll fold our mat up, mark that spot, and then we'll be ready to do our routing here. Okay, get our mat out of the way here again. Our dotted lines here from our bleed routing. And ready to make a little noise here. We normally are routing about 3/16 of an inch deep. Our copper tube's a little deeper here, so I'll reset the router a little bit deeper. Route in that pocket for the temperature sensor. Okay. Now we're ready to actually not roll our mat out, but put our copper tube in here. And actually, in this case, with a tight enough fit, I'm probably not even going to glue it down. If it was a little loose, you could just tack it in with the hot glue just to keep it from moving. Got our mat laid out here, cold bleed, it fits down in the pocket we've routed. Everything clears on the edges. Now we're ready to start attaching the floor mat down. If you weren't using a copper tube where you could slip it in, you'd want your temperature sensor to actually be attached at this point. In this case, we can slip it in after. What we generally use to attach the mats down is just regular staple gun. You can use various forms of adhesives or other things like that. Just need to keep it so the mat's laying out flat and attached until you get your SLC or your thin set down. Biggest thing, if you're using a staple gun, you're stapling in between the wires, not across them. So if you cut across them, you'll probably crush the wire and cause your loudmouth to go off. So in that case, using the staple gun, we're going to start where the cold bleed is here, just to get it attached. And then work our way out to the middle. And then work our way out to the edges. Working the slack out as we go. And again, the staples are really just to keep the mat from moving around when we do the rest of the install process. So, got it down, got the staples in, haven't nicked or crushed any wires. Cold bleed's in place. This could now be snaked up into that junction box. And you could also then take your temperature sensor, slip it down in your tube, run this up to your thermostat. And at that point, as long as the loudmouth hasn't gone off, you should be good. But what you should do at this point, you can see how when I disconnected one of the wires, like it was open circuit, it started to squeal. What you want to do is perform another electrical check, same one we did before. You want to check your resistance, white to black. Matches the tag. Then also check between white and ground and black and ground just to make sure everything is happy. In which case, at this point, if you wish, you can actually power up the heat mat. It's not going to cause any damage. Just if you want to verify that it works, or you're ready to put your loudmouth back on. Turn it on and do your tile installation just as you would do your regular tile installation. So you're going to screed your thin set out over the top, laying your tile and working across. It is important to note that unlike a normal tile installation, you really don't want to strike your tooling against the floor to knock excess thin set off. You can damage your mat that way. Also, depending on how careful you are, it's sometimes advisable to use a plastic tooth trowel rather than a metal one, just so you don't nick anything. But that's how you install the black gold heat mat. So as far as the troubleshooting goes, we have the abilities using several different tools so that if there is a break, we can pull stuff up given the part number and create you a fault map that tells you where X marks the spot there is a break, allowing you to remove hopefully a single tile, depending on the grout lines. Maybe it'll be a couple tiles, but get to your break, make a splice, and fix it. We also have several things using different types of thermal imaging stuff to help in repairs. That stuff we're happy to talk to you about in more detail. Just feel free to reach out to us. But we do provide splice kits and support for doing repairs to our mats. And we're going to have another video here that we're going to show you. This is from our tile installers who did the tiling in the space we're in right now, and just their view on how the whole process went when they worked with us doing it. And this was the first time they'd ever installed our product. Now, just to touch on a few points here, we do have on our website builder spec sheets and brochures and everything on our resources tab for Gold Heat as well as the black gold, which we'd already talked about. Feel free to take a look at it. Feel free to pass it along to your customers, your builder, having people looking at different options for homes you're building for them. That website is www.goldheat.com. Most of that information, as far as documents, can be found under the Resources tab. There is also lots of information under the product-specific tabs on the right. Just kind of recap, we have our Gold Heat system for customizing and wrapping around different shapes where you provide your heated order and we will design a mat for you to fit in your space. And then Gold Heat, which is our black gold, which is our system of predetermined panel sizes and stuff. All of the panel sizes are on the ordering tab as well as at the end of the black gold installation guide, allowing you to take your layout, pick out your panels and stuff, and then once you have your panels picked out, we will get you a quote as to what your system will cost. And that's everything we got to say. That'll bring us back to doing some question and answers on anything that we haven't answered for you up to this point. So it doesn't have to be just Gold Heat specific. It could be black gold or stuff from the beginning.
So Kyle, we've got a technical question. Is there a special waiting time after installation before you can turn the system on to allow the route to cure?
So generally speaking, ThinSet and SLC sets up in 12 to 24 hours. Usually you wait until that has been done. But we do have some of our OEMs actually use the heat mat to help cure the ThinSet and SLC under their tile because they're doing a production line sort of setup. Generally, they're using a really thin layer to keep the weight down. If you're using more of a traditional thickness, you probably want to wait for it to cure overnight as per the instructions of the ThinSet. If you are doing something like where you're pouring an SLC slab and putting vinyl on top of it, if you're not running a vapor barrier under that floating floor, you probably do want to give it a little more time to outgas so you're not driving that moisture into your flooring, which can cause some troubles. But generally speaking, next day.
And then there's a cost question that I'd be happy to address as much as possible. Someone says, does it know what it takes to professionally install in Boulder, Colorado? And I have no clue. What I recommend always is to have your tile professional give us a ring. We can help them through. And the more that we're able to educate them, the more that they will be happy and not have to price for being very concerned about how difficult it's going to be because it's really very simple. Any other questions?
We do also have some training materials and stuff for installers or builders that we're more than happy to provide them with if they're looking at doing one of these systems.
Okay. Any other questions flying by? All right. Well, price on Gold Heat. Gold Heat, there is the builder's price is about $1,000 for a 100 square foot mat. So it's roughly $10 a square foot. There's more of a tooling and engineering charge, so a little bit more under 100 square feet and a little bit less above 100 square feet. So roughly, you can count on roughly $10 a square foot for the Gold Heat product.
If you can send a drawing with a border, especially with a CAD drawing, we can fairly easily get you a pretty exact number as to what that mat or sets of mats will cost.
We can get you the to the penny number when that comes in. Well, look, this is any other questions? Okay. Awesome. So thank you for spending your Saturday with us, spending your time with us today. We're excited about our product. We're delighted to work here at Gold Heat and produce such a wonderful product. And I hope you share our excitement. I really appreciate you spending the time today. I know that you have a choice with Radiant Floor Heat products, electric Radiant Floor Heat. There are some good providers out there. We are not the only ones. But what sets us apart is some days you just have to be Nordstrom's. That's a Northwest joke. And we pride ourselves. The owner of the company, Ken Millard, says, some days you just have to be Nordstrom's. And we live that. We live that customer service. And you've experienced Kyle and Jim both on the chat or on the camera today. And they're the core of our customer service team. So please reach out to them. They really know their stuff. And they will absolutely be delighted to help you. Now, before we get to a drawing, I have to share a story with you. One of our most valued RV customers is Newmar Motor Coach. They've been a customer for many, many years, and they are now owned by Winnebago. So big names. They're about $350 million a year. During COVID, we all had challenges, right? We didn't miss a shipment. Newmar values suppliers like Gold Heat that continue to maintain their supply chain. We were reliable and service product. Whenever the phone rang, we answered it. Whenever they wanted product shipped, we shipped it. Whenever they didn't want product shipped because they couldn't take it all because they couldn't use it, we held it. It's that customer service that puts us in their top 10 vendors for this year. Not top 10%, top 10. Top 10 vendors for Newmar for this last year because of our service to one of our customers. You're thinking about a Radiant Floor Heat product, you can rest assured that we're going to work with you and make sure that you get your product when you need it. So thank you very much. Please consider us. And what we got here? I'm missing. It's live. I've said that a couple, 3, 4 times a day. The whole Gold Heat team would love to be your partner in your next tiny house project. So let's hear some of your questions. Anything else before we turn it over to tinyhouse.com, folks? Any questions left? Kyle, what do we got?
When you discuss engineered wood or bamboo flooring is appropriate to use?
With any flooring, you want to work with a manufacturer of the flooring materials. Some manufacturers are very supportive of Radiant Heat and will give you their guidelines. Some are much more guarded. Find someone who's done it before. Give us a ring. We can help you out. Some woods take to Radiant Floor Heat. Some distinctly do not. I don't have the list memorized. I can't tell you if bamboo's on the good list or the naughty list. So give us a ring. We can help you out. And if that's part of your floor selection, when we said earlier, talk to us as early as possible so that you don't make a choice that we can't give you Radiant Heat. I saw some other questions fly by on the screen. Kyle, what do we have?
Mostly thank yous.
Thank yous. Well, you're welcome, and thank you. Thank you for spending your Saturday with us. Hey, Tiny House folks, come back. You came and went away. Come back.
Hey. How's it going? It was an amazing workshop.
It's going great. We've had a wonderful 2.5 hours talking about our product. I'm so proud of the team here. We put together an awesome presentation. I hope you had as much fun as we did putting it on. It's just we love what we do, and hopefully it comes through, and we have a cool product. We just want to share it.
Yeah, I love it for sure.
No, I was going to say that exact same thing. It did come through. You guys, it's very evident that you guys are passionate about it. Obviously, very knowledgeable about it, and you love what you guys are doing, and you love your product, and because it works, and because you have confidence in it, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And we're glued to it. We love watching Kyle and the team, the rest of the team, like literally put that all together, do a live demonstration.
Watch Kyle. Don't watch me. I'm just watch Kyle. He's the one that knows what he's doing.
Yes, I love it. Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you want to?
Yeah, I guess, did you have anything else? We didn't mean to pop on right there.
We're good. We are ready for our drawing. You were
okay. Yep, that sounds good. Well, you want to go ahead and get it going?
Yep. There we go.
All right, let's see who's going to be the lucky winner of the almost $400 thermal imaging camera that can attach to either a Android or Apple phone, an iPhone. You'll just have to tell us which version of phone you want it to work with, and then we'll get that specific version out to you. So we're super excited about this. All right, let's see. Ooh, all right, drum roll, please. Let's get a couple of claps going. The winner of the thermal imaging camera is Peter Hugler with, I believe he's actually with Indigo Tiny House, Indigo River Tiny House. So super exciting, Peter. If you are live right now, yay, they're on right now. Yeah, Peter and Christina, awesome. Yep, they are the owners of Indigo River Tiny House. Just making sure I had the right Peter in there. Cool. Well, Peter, if you're up for it, you can go ahead and grab the mic if you like, and we can, get you live if you're up for it. Give you ooh, there we go. All right. They should be coming on any moment. Let's see.
I'm over there.
Can you see me? All right.
How's it going?
Hey.
All right, it's going great. I like the demo, and I think we got a customer that wants to get there. So goes my son behind me. We got a customer that wants to put one of these in their tiny house, so we'll be contacting these guys to get a quote and
that's awesome.
Get it laid down. So
yeah, well, you just got the full workshop of exactly how to make it happen when you go to install it. So
yeah.
Easy spark notes there.
Yeah, awesome.
Good stuff. Well, we'll be in touch. We'll get you in contact with them and get you your thermal imaging camera. But super excited, and thanks for popping on here. And also shout out to Peter. He did a presentation at the last event, so go check that out too.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep, of course. All right. We'll be in touch.
Peter.
Yeah,
Thanks.
congrats. Cool. Super exciting. Well, thanks so much, Brian and Kyle and the entire Gold Heat team for putting this together. You guys did literally an outstanding job of this workshop. It actually blew our minds how intense it was and, hands-on. It was really cool, really fun. And even though we weren't obviously able to be in person, I think it still came through really smoothly, and we were able to experience that in-person, hands-on workshop feel. Cool that we're able to see, the step-by-step process, all the, the tools, materials, everything that's needed. And it's actually, like you guys showed, it's pretty quick and simple. So excited.
Very quick and simple.
Yeah.
And big shout out too to Jim Falsgraf, who was in the back pounding on the chat keyboard answering questions, and Ken Millard, the founder, also in the back answering questions. So the team support.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Thanks, Jim.
The keyboard warriors.
Yeah, keyboard warriors. That's right. That's right.
Good stuff. Well, really excited. We're going to get this recording available through the website and get it out there. So we'll make sure that, if you're only able to watch part of it, or I know there's actually quite a few people who said that they weren't able to watch it today and they're planning on watching the rerun. So we'll make sure to get that out. And I don't think I had anything else. If you guys had any final closing wrap-up thoughts.
That's an awesome day. Great way to spend a Saturday afternoon.
Yes, it was. And it's a beautiful day outside up here. And definitely you'll have to go enjoy it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Brian.
Of course.
Thank you, Gold Heat.
Yep.
Bye,
Everyone,
guys.
take care. We'll be in touch, y'all. Bye-bye.